Well, we've been talking about what it means that we become brand new people with a brand new purpose when we're followers of Jesus. Unfortunately, it's easy to go back to the old ways of thinking and acting, but when we do, we miss out on all that God has for us. So how do we live like the brand new person God has made us to be? Well, Ephesians 4:22 and 24 tell us how to live as a brand new person when it says, "Put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds. Put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness." See, we are instructed to put off our old self and put on our new self. That old person is essentially your old attitudes, emotions, and practices that used to direct your life. But remember, you're no longer that old self. The verse tells us that in order to put off and put on, we need the Spirit's help. We need to be renewed in the spirit of our minds. We have to believe that we are brand new, that we are now made righteous, that we are to be like Christ. This is our new identity. So we need to think, feel, and act like Christ. In Ephesians, Paul prays for us in chapter 1, verse 18 to 19. He says, "I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people, and his incomparably great power for us who believe." Did you catch that? For us who believe. Living in your true identity requires believing, and believing comes when your minds are renewed to this truth, to actually believe that you're new, and to now live like you're new. Then you'll no longer go back to the old way. If you think you're the same old person with the same old struggles, then you'll most likely live that way. I've heard too many Christians say things like, "I struggle with anger, I struggle with pornography, I struggle with being constantly anxious." Well, when we say things like this, we're not believing God when he says you're no longer that old person. You don't need to go back to those sinful habits or thinking. Paul knew that we have a hard time comprehending this, so that's why he prays for us again in chapter 3, verse 18 and 19. He prayed for us that we would have power together with all of the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Why? Because when you really believe that you're loved, then you will welcome the fullness of God in every area of your life. His identity, his truth, his thoughts, his love, his self-control. Your mind will be renewed and you'll have new attitudes, new desires, new emotions, and new practices. And this is who God created you to be. It all comes down to knowing that you're loved and then living loved. Ephesians 5:2 says it this way, "And walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." Without love, our behaviors won't change. Jesus demonstrates this to us. The cross says, "I love you." The purpose of your life is to love. As the great commandment tells us, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So now you know how this is possible. It all starts with God and his love for you. When you trust God's love, demonstrated in Jesus, then you become brand new and can fulfill your God-given purpose in life. So no going back to your old ways, your old thinking, or your old behavior. Live loved today, for without that, you won't be able to know what it really means to be your true self, to love others, and to love God more fully. You see, that's living a brand new life, and that's courageous living.